The Echo in the WellHouse. Chapter 1. The Inheritance and the Hum. The old house, Blackwood Manor, came to Elias Thorne as a complete surprise, a forgotten legacy from a great aunt he had never met. It sat deep in the New England woods, 2 hours from the nearest paved road, and it was suffocatingly quiet. Elias, a city dweller accustomed to the constant rush, initially saw it as an escape. He moved in hoping to write, but the silence was too heavy, the isolation too absolute. On the third night he heard it, a low resonant hum. It wasn't electrical, it vibrated in his teeth, a sound that seemed to come not from the air but from the very stone of the foundation. He traced it to the back of the property, where a small moss-covered stone structure, a well house, stood sentinel over an abandoned overgrown garden. The hum was loudest there. The well house had a heavy iron ring door, locked from the outside with a chain so rusted it looked like a fossil. Elias tried to ignore it. He told himself it was the wind, the old pipes, anything but the unsettling truth. The house was unhappy. Chapter 2. The Whisper of Absence. Over the next week, the hum evolved. It began to fade during the day, only to return precisely at 3:07 a.m. Elias had checked his watch obsessively, and now, the hum was interspersed with something new, a whisper. It wasn't language, it was the sound of a voice being used without intent, a sibilant rush like sand pouring from a high place. It sounded like an attempt to speak that always fell just short of forming a recognizable word. Elias was a rational man. He called a local historian. The historian, a woman named Mrs. Albright, sounded hesitant. "The Thorne family," she said, her voice dropping. "They were known to be private. Eccentric. They say the well house wasn't for water. It was built by your ancestor, Silas Thorne, after his wife passed. He claimed she hadn't gone very far." "What did he keep in it?" Elias asked, his breath catching. Silas called it the echo chamber. He believed that sound, once made, never truly dies. He tried to trap her last words in there. This offered a bizarre but potentially rational explanation. Still, the feeling of being watched intensified. Objects in the house would shift, a book would fall, a chair would be slightly angled toward a corner. Small, unnerving displacements of reality. Chapter 3. The Unlocking. One rainy Thursday night, the whisper finally broke through the sound barrier. Elias was huddled under a blanket in the parlor, the hum vibrating his skull, when a voice, thin and fragile as old glass, spoke. "Cold." It was a single, clear word, spoken right beside his ear. The hum stopped instantly, replaced by a deep, suffocating silence. Elias couldn't write, he couldn't sleep. Driven by a mix of terror and compulsion, he grabbed an axe from the woodshed. He knew what he had to do. He went to the well house. In the pouring rain, the rusted chain was no match for the axe. With a screech of tearing metal, the lock shattered. Elias pulled the iron ring door open. A blast of air, damp and freezing, rushed past him. The structure was small, maybe 8 feet across. In the center, there was no well, only a circular pit lined with smoothly polished, dark granite. The pit descended into an inky blackness. Chapter 4. The Echo. Elias held his lantern up. The light revealed walls carved with complex geometric patterns, Silas's ritualistic attempt to capture and contain sound. As Elias peered into the pit, the hum returned, but this time it was a choir. It was 1,000 overlapping whispers, sighs, and murmurs, all trapped in the echo chamber. The combined sound was like a torrent of psychic static. Then, from the bottom of the black pit, a light rose. It wasn't fire or electricity. It was a faint, internal illumination, a sickly green-white. As the light grew, it began to take shape, a swirling mass of dust and vapor, coalescing into a human silhouette. The figure was tall and impossibly thin. It didn't look like an old woman. It looked like an absence of light wearing the shape of a person. And then, the figure spoke, not in the whisper of a dead woman, but in the clear, strong voice of Elias Thorne. "Elias, you finally let me out." It wasn't his voice mocking him. It was his voice, full of his own fear, his own solitude, and his own desire for escape, now free and independent of him. Silas Thorne hadn't trapped his wife's words. He had trapped the essence of isolation, the echo of the listener. The figure climbed slowly out of the pit. It moved with the stiff, unnatural gait of someone who had forgotten how to walk. As it stepped onto the dirt floor of the well house, it looked Elias directly in the eyes. It was so cold waiting for someone to listen, it said, its voice still perfectly matching Elias's. "But now, I have the house, and the silence. And you get to be the echo." Elias tried to scream, but the hum intensified, filling his mouth, pushing the sound back into his lungs. The figure, his own mirror, smiled, a horrible, wide, possessive smile. Elias felt a sudden, sharp, freezing pain in his chest, as if his voice box had been ripped out. He stumbled back, falling into the dark pit. The last thing he saw before the iron ring door slammed shut, chaining itself shut with a terrible grinding sound, was his own figure, standing in the doorway, raising the axe and beginning to hum.